Welcome back to the Mindful Presenter Truth Series. Truth 24. A presentation without stories is a lecture. A presentation without stories is a lecture. Now, remember, these are my truths, my personal and professional truths, which means that you may not necessarily like or agree with them, but I wouldn't share anything with you that I didn't really believe to be a truth and that could be helpful to you in a very significant way. Imagine this: you're attending a business presentation and somebody is sharing all of the information, all of the data, all of the facts, all of the numbers, the case study, the evidence, everything professionally that you absolutely need. So there's nothing wrong with that, but that's all they share. Another presenter shares that too, but in and amongst that, they share a short, relevant, compelling story. Which presenter do you think you're going to remember? And which presentation do you think you'll remember? I promise you, it'll be the presenter who shared the story. We are hardwired to learn and live by stories. It's my belief that everything's a story. The whole of life is a story. Every conversation is a story, and every presentation should be a story too. Stories breathe life into presentation. They help us to help the audience to step into the picture that we're painting. And it creates part of that emotional connection that's critically important when presenting. Remember, mindful presenting is the distinction between intellectual understanding, just sharing all that stuff so that people get it, which is important, really important. But it's the distinction between that and the bridge to the emotional connection, so they feel something. Otherwise, they won't do anything with all that information. The way to do that is to tell stories. If you don't tell stories, then arguably it's just a lecture. We're just dumping a load of information on people and sitting back and living in hope again that they're going to get it and remember it and do something with it. There are so many different types of stories that you can tell. You can tell stories that, some of my favorites are the stories that spark action, something that happened that will get the audience to stand back and think, wow, if that happened to me, what would I do? Or what would happen if I did that? I wonder if it would have the same effect. Or it just opens up the mind to be a bit more creative and thoughtful about a situation. Stories that spark action. Stories about problems. Not just problems that you had that you didn't fix, because nobody wants to hear about how lousy you are at solving problems. They want to hear about a problem that you had that you resolved in perhaps an unusual or certainly a significant way. If it's not that, it's stories about who you are and what's making you do what you're doing that's going to help them and impact them in the way that you want them to. Could be stories about your values and why this is relevant, why this is important. Could be stories about the future. There are stories everywhere. We just have to find the stories, and they have to be, remember, short, relevant, and compelling. I learned the power of storytelling many, many years ago, long before I entered this world and really even understood it. I won't tell you the story because it's too long and it's not relevant here, but let me tell you how I learned it. I was traveling on business and I was staying in a hotel, and for the first time in a hotel, because I'd stayed in lots of them, for the first time in a bath, I saw a rubber duck. A rubber duck. I'm a grown man in a bath, in a hotel, and I pick up this rubber duck and start playing with it. And it changed so much for me that evening. It was kind of a turning point. I had this epiphany. Sounds weird, sounds strange, but I promise you it's true. And what happened was, the relevance of this story is that several weeks later, I had to craft and deliver a presentation to an audience at a conference. And this was an important presentation. There was a lot at stake here because I needed to lead change. In the process of thinking about that presentation and crafting it, my intuition said, tell them about the duck. Tell them what happened with you and the duck. You have to tell them. And I'm like, no, I can't tell people about the duck. I'm a grown professional, grown man. How can I do that? But for some reason, I listened to my intuition and I told the duck story. People got it. They really got it. And it made a big difference to the point that I was trying to make. Not only that, they remembered the story for years and years and years. I became known as the duck guy. I didn't really want that reputation, I promise you. But it stuck. The power of storytelling. Remember, a presentation without stories or a story is a lecture. Tell your audience stories, please. Thank you.